What's going on, guys? Jake Peffer here. Welcome back to Jake's Cinema Room. With the release of Jeepers Creepers Reborn that comes out next Friday, I decided to go back and take a look at the first 3 movies in the Jeepers Creepers franchise. And I'm going to give you a review of each movie, break them down, and just give you my 2 cents on what I thought about each one in the franchise. I want to go ahead and put out there up front that all of these reviews are going to have some spoilers. So if you have not seen the movies, you may want to go check them out before listening to the reviews. If you don't care, then listen on. Also, I want to go ahead and put out there that I am not going to discuss the criminal past of director Victor Salva. Just going to talk about the movies, not going to get into any of that stuff. So if you're expecting to hear me touch on that, don't worry about it. We're just talking about the movies. So let's start with the first one, Jeepers Creepers. That came out back in 2001. Stars Gina Phillips and Justin Long. They play brother and sister, Trish and Derry. They're on their way back from spring break when they have a run-in with the aptly named Creeper, who's played by Jonathan Breck. And yeah, craziness ensues, to say the least. This is one of those movies that I don't think people talk about enough, but probably rightfully so too, because this is what I would consider a mid-tier horror movie. It's definitely not one of the greatest, but it's got a lot going for it. And it definitely has some interesting things that work here very well. And, you know, it was good enough to get at least a pretty decent sequel on that second one. You'll hear my thoughts on the third one when I get to that review. And, you know, now we have this fourth one coming out, which director Victor Salva is not involved with. And we'll see how much it really ties into these first 3 movies at all. But supposedly it's supposed to take place in this, you know, same universe. But the Jeepers Creepers movies have always been interesting to me, and I think a lot of it starts with the villain. The Creeper himself is a pretty terrifying villain, and this first movie does a good job at showcasing that. They kind of use the Jaws approach where, you know, they give you little glimpses here and there throughout the movie, but they don't really show you the full-on Creeper till, you know, almost an hour into the movie. And I think that builds a lot of tension, builds a lot of the good atmosphere that this movie does have, and lets you kind of connect with the 2 main characters a little bit more before you meet this Creeper guy. And like I said, you know, he's pretty terrifying. I mean, Jonathan Breck plays him in all 3 of these first movies, and he does a great job. Like, he's clearly a very good physical actor. I don't know how much of the degree of stunts he's actually doing versus stuntmen, but if he's doing most of this stuff, he's killing it. And the makeup effects on him look really, really good. I mean, it's definitely an interesting design for this particular creature. And, you know, it makes him terrifying. And he has some interesting backstory too, some of which doesn't really get introduced until the second movie. But in this one, there's a character named Giselle that comes into the picture and kind of gives us the exposition on basically what he does. He can consume different parts of people, and whatever he consumes becomes a part of him. So let's say somebody cut off his arm. He goes and bites somebody's arm off. Boom, he's got a new arm. You know, pretty interesting concept for a villain in a horror movie. So I liked a lot of those aspects that they put into there. You do get to see some of that later on in the movie where he does kill some people and take advantage of, hey, I lost my leg. I'm going to bite this guy's leg off, and, you know, boom, now I got a new leg. You know, just kind of cool overall. But like I said, the Creeper himself, I think, is definitely the biggest selling point of these movies. You know, without him and without the performance of Jonathan Breck, you're not really going to get a whole lot out of these movies otherwise, because unfortunately the main characters, not so much in this one they're decent, but when you get to the second one and definitely into the third one, the characters are just not all that redeemable. But here you have Justin Long and Gina Phillips, and they make a good pairing. I think, you know, they're, like I said, they're brother and sister, which Victor Salva wanted to do. That way there wouldn't be any sexual tension between the 2 main characters, as if, you know, if they were boyfriend and girlfriend, or if they were just, you know, 2 friends hanging out or whatever. And I think that works well. You can really get a good sense of their chemistry, and the fact that they are brother and sister. I think they pull that off pretty well. I will say Justin Long, I think, is doing a better job in this movie than Gina Phillips. Gina Phillips, unfortunately, just it's not that she's bad. She just comes off as kind of lackluster for the most part. Her character's pretty decently written and everything. And like I said, she's not doing a bad job in her performance. I think she's just getting overshadowed by Justin Long, who this is one of his earlier performances, and he's knocking it out of the park in this. There's definitely some times here and there where you can tell it's definitely the early stages of his career. You get this particular franchise has a long history of characters that just like to yell every time they can about any little thing. And you definitely get a lot of that here in that first movie. But outside of that, I mean, both your leads are compelling enough. And like I said, their chemistry works well enough where you feel for them and you want them to make it to the end. But I definitely like Justin Long's performance just a bit better than Gina Phillips's overall. And it's a shame that her career didn't really take off past this. I mean, she makes a brief appearance in that third movie, but outside of that, she hasn't really been in too many big things, because I think for the longest time she was waiting to come back to this franchise, and all that kind of got pushed back. And, that's some stuff I'll talk about in the later reviews for these movies. Outside of your two main characters in The Creeper, I mean, there's really not much else in the way of characters or cast. Like I said, there's the character Giselle, who comes in that's like a psychic that's telling Trish and Derry that she sees these visions of one of them in a room, basically getting mutilated by the creeper, and she won't tell them which one it is. And there's the whole mystery of, which one of them is going to be the inevitable one to get taken by the creeper, because he doesn't just kill anybody. And that's another interesting fact I liked about the creeper himself, is he doesn't just kill whoever he wants. He basically sniffs them out, and if there's something he likes in that particular person, that's who he goes after. And there's something in people's fear that he can smell that attracts him to these people and wants those certain things from them. And I think that's a cool concept to put to a horror movie villain. You don't really see that on a lot of other ones where you have Jason and Michael Myers who just kill people to kill people. And this, he actually has something that's, pushing him along to attack these certain people. And I like that concept of, hey, I have this mission because this person, I smell something on them, and I definitely want it. So I'm going to get it by any means necessary. And I think that's a pretty cool setup. There's a lot of great imagery and atmosphere in this movie. Some pretty chilling and haunting images as well. When Justin Long goes down into a cave where the creeper has all these bodies all up on the wall, stitched together. It's a pretty frightening image until you look a little closer and realize that pretty much all the bodies are essentially mannequins. Outside of that, though, just seeing all these dead bodies in a cave like that is pretty scary stuff. And when we inevitably get to the end of this movie, where we see that the creeper takes Justin Long's character, and it ends with that terrifying shot where it pans up and you just see that his whole head has been basically opened up so the creeper could take his eyes. And that's where the inevitable Jeepers Creepers comes from, because that song plays throughout the movie, Jeepers Creepers, where'd you get those peepers? He's basically wanting Justin Long for his eyes, and you get that creepy shot where the creeper stands behind his open head and you see his eyes peer through Justin Long's open eye sockets. Definitely a haunting image to end on, and it's one of those things that makes this movie definitely entertaining. And even though, like I said before, that it's a mid-tier horror movie, it's still entertaining enough and has a lot going for it that it still works more than it doesn't. And it's definitely something, if you haven't seen, I would say to check out, especially if you're a big horror fan. Add it to your Halloween list. It's a fun ride, and it's definitely worth checking out if you have not seen it. Overall, I would probably rate Jeepers Creepers probably about a 6.5 out of 10. Like I said, it's not breaking any new ground. It's not the greatest thing of all time. But when it came out back in 2001, it was somewhat refreshing, because for about 5 or 6 years before that, you had so many of these horror movies that were basically just trying to be Scream. They would cast these young teenagers and try to make it real slick and have them talk all, ooh, yeah, you know, like Kevin Williamson writes, because that was the big thing back then. So it was nice and refreshing to see a movie like this come out where you didn't have all that going. You had somebody that was wanting just to put out a really good horror movie. And, you know, I think for the most part, it holds up well and does that job. You know, it's frightening. It's got some tense moments. It's got some decent performances. And overall, it's a solid horror flick. But yeah, that's about it for me, guys. If you have seen Jeepers Creepers, please let me know what you thought about it. Be sure to look out for my reviews on Jeepers Creepers 2 and Jeepers Creepers 3 coming in the near future. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more reviews, and I'll leave all my links down in the description where you can follow me and all that good stuff. And until next time, I'll catch you all later.